haven't called that many times, have you?
Pigs are flying right now. Sorry, Bolts.
Dan Kamal joins us. He is the radio play-by-play voice of the Atlanta Thrashers here on Hockey This Morning. Also the Senior Director of Radio Operations. That's a big business card. You carry it around in your back pocket?
Yeah, it's too heavy. I have to email it.
Now, this is kind of neat because we're going to be talking to Ole Kolzig later on this week. He's been named one of the honorary captains for the All-Star game, the AHL All-Star Classic in Hershey. Great Hershey connection right here in the studio.
You know what? I had the great fortune of working there, Rossi, for 12 years, actually. Frank Mathers hired me way back when, the late, great Frank Mathers, and what a hockey town that is. And I guess the area has been named the best minor league sports town in the U.S.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's got the Harrisburg Senators baseball team,
right?
Hershey Bears hockey team. They love their sports there, and they show up.
Well, Harrisburg and their baseball team, they fed the Montreal Expos for a long time.
Oh.
There's some great talent that went through that town.
There was one, I had the good fortune of working for them for a bit as well, and there was one year, it was guys like White and Urbina and Mike Lansing, and they sent 8 guys to the major leagues in 1 year.
That had to be around like 1990, 1991.
It was quite a while ago, and that was when Montreal's farm system was the best in baseball.
Yeah.
And the team should have won the World Series in '94.
Should have.
Unfortunately, yeah. If there had been a World Series.
Well, let's ask Donald Fear about that.
Yeah,
and now we'll get a chance to talk to him a little bit more, right?
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we will. But you know what? The first thing he talked about was expanding to Europe. I sure hope the great minds of the NHL get together and figure out a way to grow the sport rather than destroy it.
How do you do that, though, with the European, if you do go to a European expansion? I mean, I think you've reached the maximum here. If you were to try and get any more teams, people complain about the product being watered down now.
Are you still hearing those complaints?
I still am.
I'm not hearing them as much anymore with the parity in the league right now and the fact that...
Well, I think that's a byproduct of it, though. I think that's partly a byproduct of it, that you're going to have. I think it was David Poyle who said on the channel here that a lot of teams now are going to have their, let's say, top 4 or 5 guys. That's where they invest the money, and everybody else is going to be filling a spot. And if you happen to find a diamond in the rough, great, but there are fewer and far further between than they have been.
Then I would encourage coaches to do a better job. You know, I really believe in what our coaching staff is doing in Atlanta. I really believe in Craig Ramsey and John Torchetti, Mike Stothers. You wouldn't call the Atlanta Thrashers the most gifted team in the NHL, but you also wouldn't, after watching a game, say, wow, that was flat. They are go, go, go. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talent on the team collectively. And it's a very exciting and compelling product to watch. And to me, that's where hockey needs to be. I don't think it's necessarily a dilution of talent as it is a dumbing down of coaching styles.
Do you think that it's in itself is a byproduct of coaches wanting to hold on to their jobs?
Exactly right. Absolutely 100%. Yes. Yes. The easiest way to win is to slow it down. Even in this new era, slow it down, try to win 3-2, 2-1, 1-0.
So when do we get the first coaching contract with the no movement clause? Right?
Don't know.
But that's the type of thinking that it would take, I think, in order to maybe loosen things up a little bit. By taking a little bit of that pressure off a guy. I mean, look at Bruce Boudreau. Right now, in NHL history, of coaches who have coached 250 games or more, he has the best winning percentage. He has a better winning percentage than Sam Pollock, than Toe Blake, than Bowman. He's got a better winning percentage than Scotty Bowman, and yet they hit an 8-game winless streak. Ooh, he's on the hot seat. You're going to have to fire him because you know what? When he took over this team, this is exactly where they were at, and they fired that coach.
You know why? it's all about expectations. Boudreau came in there, and he set the bar very, very high, and they've had, unfortunately for that team, they've had early playoff ousters. So the expectation level, it's all about managing expectations. The expectation level in Washington is we better get to the Stanley Cup final and see what happens from there. Those are tough expectations to live with.
For one day this weekend, first place Atlanta Thrashers. Washington gets back up a point on their win against Ottawa. Yeah. But these are different times. These are really fun times to be following the Atlanta Thrashers. And there's the attendance and all the rest, the ownership and all the rest. But you mentioned Craig Ramsey and his coaching staff. Let's start with Rick Dudley.
Absolutely.
And Rick Dudley coming in here. Don Waddell, he became a bit of a punching bag for this organization. He was, for a long time, aside from Kovalchuk, he was the face of that franchise. And with the constant questions of ownership and when that was going to be settled, he finally gets kicked upstairs, and they bring in Rick Dudley. First and foremost, give me an idea of the differences between a Waddell and a Dudley from a managerial standpoint.
Oh, they're great friends, number one, and I think they think alike in a lot of ways. And Don had a lot of pieces in place that led to the success the Thrashers are experiencing so far this season. But I think when Rick came in, the number one mantra was to get faster and to get bigger and to get a lot tougher to play against. And the Rick and Craig Ramsey connection is very long and very deep as well. And I'm sure they collaborated very closely on what kind of team Rick wanted, what kind of coach Craig Ramsey is, and those two things melded together extremely well. It's a faster team, a tougher team. It's a team that closes gaps extremely well when it's playing well and makes it hard to breathe for the opposition on a good night. And make no mistake, the whole learning curve with a lot of new faces and new style was accelerated by some incredibly solid goaltending. I don't think anyone expected, except maybe Craig Ramsey and Rick Dudley, expected Andre Pavelec to take such a quantum leap from great talent with potential to a bona fide number one goalie. There was a stretch of games this year, Rossi, 7 in a row, and his goals against started at 2.46. His save percentage started at 9.25. And for the next 7 games, he lowered his goals against and raised his save percentage. To me, as a student of goaltending, that's almost unfathomable at the NHL level.
Goaltending has been, at times, the Achilles heel of this team.
At times. How about for 10 years?
Well, but there were certain flashes in there where you wondered. I mean, Johan Hedberg, is he suddenly going to step up and be a number one guy?
He had a great year last year.
Kari Lehtonen, is he going to be a number one guy?
Kari's 1 year that he was healthy, played, I think, 68 games, maybe off by a couple. That was the year they made the playoffs.
Right.
No mistake. I mean, no coincidence.
So at times, it's been a bright spot.
But big picture,
Other
10
times,
years, not so much.
Not so much. What's Pavelec bringing to this team, and what makes him what he is, and why he clicks with this team?
He's 100% accountable, and he's ready to play on any night, in any situation. He's a really energetic, durable, strong young kid. And when I say accountable, no goal is ever the fault of anybody else. He's quick, and he could stand on his head and make 50 saves. And the first thing out of his mouth is, our team played great. They let me see the first shot. They cleaned up the rebounds. Guys love him. And when guys have confidence in a goaltender and love to play in front of that goaltender, that's a beautiful combination.
And meanwhile, Andre Pavelec is down on the ice. And he is laying on his back. I'm not sure what happened. Apparently someone ran into Andre Pavelec. He is laying back on his, apparently not hit, and the medical team is tending to Andre Pavelec. He is lying on his back about 7 feet outside the crease. 2.5 minutes in,
30.
the Capitals had a brief forecheck.
Write it down when you get a chance.
Chimera shot the puck wide. Quick transition for Atlanta. I didn't think anyone had run into Andre Pavelec. It is a very daunting spectacle to see an athlete laying on his back.
What a
Opening
weird
night.
Yeah, what a weird moment.
Yeah, they did every medical test known to man, and then probably did them over again, and decided there was absolutely nothing wrong, thankfully, with the young man. Since that happened, I've run into so many people who say, oh, yeah, I've fainted in the past. I didn't realize that was so prevalent. So I guess just, I don't know whether it was dehydration or anxiety, whatever it was. And he tried to get to the quick, as I mentioned in that clip, quick transition, puck came right out of the zone, and we're heading back to my right, which is the Thrashers' offensive zone in the first period. Ron Hainsey busts in, right side, takes a shot, it's deflected up and into the netting. So everybody's looking that way. Then everybody is wondering why some people are starting to look the other way, and they see the goaltender on the ice. And it was like, wow. I mean, you could have heard whispers in the rink at that point. But at one point, about 3 weeks later, he said, Dan, do me a favor. He said, ask people to stop asking me about it. He said, I just want to play hockey. So thankfully, he's great, and his goaltending has been great.
Weirdest thing you've ever seen happen on the ice?
Most frightening thing
Yeah.
I think I've ever seen, because, I'm not medically gifted. I should have known when they weren't cutting his uniform off that it wasn't life-threatening. But when you see an athlete not moving, the worst comes to mind.
Sure.
That his life is in danger. And a lot of people thought that. But the more medically astute realized that as long as they weren't cutting his uniform off and putting the defibrillator on him, that he was at least alive, and they were trying to figure out why he was down on the ice.
And it's never happened to him before?
Never before, and
Not since.
hopefully never again. Right.
Interesting to see the way he rebounds from that and has put together a pretty glorious season to this point. But not the only acquisition or move that has paid off here in this season. And I got to ask you about Dustin Byfuglien, because head and shoulders, he stands out in a big way. Obviously, his size, his style of play, but also that he's defying all the critics, including JR, who came out and said, this is nuts, this doesn't work, this isn't the way to go. He's a big guy, put him in front of the opposition net, and yet look at what he's done and the leadership that he's now been entrusted with by the Thrashers.
You know what I think he does, Rossi? I think he gives the team swagger. Every team needs swagger. And in a really embraceable way, Buff gives you swagger. He's a great teammate. He's a fun-loving guy. He keeps things loose. But on the ice, he has been a game breaker. And the one thing we wondered after losing Kovalchuk and building a team that needed to score by committee and needed to be a real team in the true sense of the word, would there be a game breaker? And by putting Buff on the back line, it looks amazingly far-sighted by the Thrashers brass of Dudley and Coach Ramsey. He is the game breaker, and he gives this team a lot of jam, and he's very tough to play against. And he's playing 22 minutes a night instead of 16. So he's on the ice more, and we're fond of saying his body is built more for a defensive style play rather than the quick stops and starts of a forward style of play. And he's loving it. He wanted to play it, and you can see it in his game.